Hey everybody, this is Brian Yellow on Origin Stories on Creativity number 34. I had Jess Creadon on. She is a singer, songwriter, and science fiction author. She is one of the unique people who is actually trying to avoid writing about dystopian futures. She wants to write about utopian futures. She is a Trekkie from the beginning. She likes the idea of the Star Trek universe that Gene Roddenberry wrote about, where the future is a glorious place where human beings get along and actually strive for the stars and make a difference, and humans can actually live harmoniously with each other. It was a really good conversation. We had a great time. Maybe we had a little audio issues on her end with her phone, but overlook it. There was quite a bit of good stuff here. We talked about critique circles. She says get out there, form a community. That's been a theme that has been developed throughout these conversations with authors and artists, is make friends, find people who share common grounds. The song at the beginning of this episode is written and performed by Jess Creadon as well, called Make It Stop. So let's go ahead and enjoy that, and we'll get started.
Make it, or make it stop. Take it, break it, but stay on top. Play it, say it, just not allowed. Think it, mean it, or join the crowd. Another step, it's not too high. Another minute passing by. Make it faster, harder, closer. Encourage her, but do not force her. Make it, or make it stop. Take it, break it, but watch for cops. Say, what do you mean? Say, what do you feel? Say, what do you mean? Say, what do you feel? What do you feel? Make it, or make it stop. Am I folk or jazz? Rock / pop? Am I still real? Am I still free, or has America already digested me? Keep it moving, enjoy the pacing. Enjoy the ride, we're all racing. Keep on chewing, but never tasting. I wanna win, but time is wasting. All the twinkle, twinkle, little stars on prime time with their brand new cars. They're up above the world's fire while we're falling into dark. Make it, or your life will suck. And don't say hell, don't say fuck, and don't give up one city block before you find your way back to your love. Say what you mean, say what you feel. Say what you mean, say what you feel. I'm saying what I mean and what I feel. I'm saying what I mean and knowing I'm still real. Just leave the world a deal.
She's a talented person, and I'm gonna let her get into it. Here's Jess Creadon. I discovered her on Tall Tale TV. How'd you discover him?
I ran across him on Scribophile. Somebody posted on a public forum. Scribophile, if you don't know, is an online writing community. Super fun group. I love using it. It's kind of
Shoot
like
me
my
that link.
writing home.
I've never heard of him
Um,
before.
oh, I love it. But they have public forums where people just kind of talk about whatever's going on in the writing world, and said, "Hey, I know this guy who's doing. He's accepting submissions to turn your short stories into an audio
Yeah.
book for YouTube." And everyone I know that applied got in pretty quick, and so we've all been listening to each other's stories ever since.
That's really neat. And he does such a great job too. He does the different voices. And I gather your story was one person with three distinct personalities,
Yes.
right?
Well, it was one person who had lived in three alternate versions of, kind of a multiverse situation. So he
Interesting.
ran into a potential him at this, same age, same time, same place, but who had made different choices and was kind of a different um, flavor of himself. And then they met another. Um, for which the first one was considered brave, which was kind of funny. But yeah, it's potential time, imaginary time, based on Stephen Hawking's imaginary time. Although I go way into fantasy with it, but why not?
Why not, right? I mean, neither one of us is going to ever reach the pinnacle of intelligence that Stephen Hawking's reached, unfortunately. I mean, that poor guy is stuck in a wheelchair as long as he has. He's probably
I
reached depths of his brain that we could only speculate on, which,
right.
my goodness.
Well,
So
he had made a call out, Stephen Hawking, for, I've written this book about imaginary time. Why aren't there more science fiction stories about it? And I was like, well, I'll try.
right,
Why not?
where'd you see that call at? Do you?
It was in an interview he did, um, probably about 8 or 9 years ago, that I ran across on Twitter randomly.
Oh, really? That's Twitter's such amazing for that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, unfortunately, in the age that we live in, we randomly fall onto stuff. I mean, it's not like you can deliberately look for things anymore. It's like you just happen upon stuff
happen upon
nowadays.
them, discover them. I love the word of mouth and how that just moves.
Communities kind of develop like that, don't they? I'm on Reddit all the time. Are you familiar with Reddit?
I've used it some, not very much. Mostly, I had a friend who lived on Reddit for several years, and he would report to me. So I had this interesting version of what's happening on the internet reported to me by my very comedic friend, like verbally over the phone. So that was that was my introduction to Reddit.
It's fascinating. That's like the internet. You bring it to your social network, and your social network brings you what they've discovered as well. Me and my
Hmm.
wife did the same thing. She just kind of went viral on a small little comment that she made. They were talking about some kind of food app on the food subreddit, and she went put that thing from Silicon Valley, hot dog, not a hot dog, and she made 719 points. She was so proud of herself. She's basically so happy about that one 719 point comment. But anyway, back to your writing, not my wife's.
It's fine. It's funny. I, people talk about uh, writing competition, and this is just something I can't even fathom believing in such a thing, because every good writer gets another. I mean, we're not in competition. Does that make sense?
No, it really is. Getting back to myself, because obviously I'm an egotist, so anything that you mention, I've got to bring up a story about myself.
Right. Because
There,
because the more
there's
good stories, the more people are going to read more good stories.
no, that's my really a good point. And the reason I brought up Reddit is there's a lot of really good communities on there. I submit once a month to this fantasy writing community. And there's a bunch of people that just submit stories, 20 or 30 stories just
Mhm.
show up once a month, and we read each other's work, and we're like, okay, see you next month. It's
Do you
so
critique
fantastic.
them too, or do you just read them?
Unfortunately, well, I don't really like critiquing. I just don't feel like there's going to be a lot of benefit in that for a lot of the newer writers anyway.
Yeah, it can
Do
be
you?
harmful at the new stage when they can't handle the feedback. But That's what
Yeah.
Scribify is. It's a critiquing community.
Do you like the critique aspect? Do you like to take the newer writers and show them the ropes, or do you like to be critiqued as a writer?
I critique probably more than I write, I would say, but I learned so much from working with people at different levels of where their talents are best, where mine are weakest, and seeking out people to learn from and people to help learn what I've been learning, to practice the things that I'm learning.
Well, do you read? Obviously, you're a voracious reader. I would imagine you're
Yes.
picking up books left and right. Now that's where you would learn. I would imagine what you love, what you look for in fiction.
But when you're critiquing, what you're doing is you're not looking for the perfect story. What you're looking to do is to hear that author's vision and help them build that perfect story. So you're not just practicing, I'm learning from something that's perfect, you're learning from something as it perfects. And it helps you, relate that to your own work and where you're at, whether it's a first draft and you have a story problem. Well, this person solved it this way. Now, that's not my problem, but the way they came to that answer, I can follow some of these maps that we're making together and how to grow the work.
Yeah.
And I work with, I'm up to about like 60 critique partners that sometimes I'm working with, 10 of these on a weekly basis, and some of them I'm waiting for their next revision for me to draft or beta for them.
Are you working with novels within these critique partnerships?
Mm-hmm. Novels.
You are. So I mean, does that get distracting though? Because I was looking through some of the stuff that you were posting online, and I was reading through an interview that you had given a blogger about your work. And one of the things that stood out to me the most was you had written a novel, and you were negative about it. You were saying that it was stuck in revision. Probably, I think you said something along the lines of a revisionary hell that was never going to get out. And so you were starting something else, and you were working on that second piece. And it dawned on me, and based on the statement that you just made, do you find yourself constantly working on other people's work and not getting to the point where your work is being done?
Oh no, I'm selfish with my own work too. And I will put off deadlines for betas if I have to. If I'm like, I'm busy. This, I've gotten into flow. I'm ready for this next big scene. I write in huge chunks.
Yeah.
And not on some people say you have to write every day to be good.
You really do.
I have to work with words every day, absolutely. But I'm not writing to words every day. I gift some of that time into the community, and I learn from the community. And then when I'm ready to sit down, I'll write 1,000 words within a couple of days without even like taking a breath from it. But I have to wait for, I don't have to wait for those moments, but when I'm writing the words, that's where I find the voice the cleanest, my vision the strongest. And so I'm not losing word count in my work by giving back. I'm getting ready.
That's very interesting.
I'm filling myself up.
Because me personally, I write in the morning. Like when I first wake up, I'm like, that's when my juices are the freshest. I sit down in front of my computer, and hopefully I start pounding out some words.
Right.
You know what I mean? Sometimes I edit a podcast.
Right.
Sometimes I might do a graphic, and that's really dumb. I really wish I'd never do that. But when I give back, it's when I talk to an author like you, or I talk to my friend Emma, or I talk to somebody else about writing. But when I write, it's in the morning. I don't talk to anybody else. If I talk to somebody else who grew up, I can never ever get back into the flow of things.
Wow. This is fascinating to me. When you sit down though, do you immediately write new words, or do you look over what you just wrote the day before, the last couple of pages?
I can do that too. I can
do you
edit.
catch in? Well, I do the same thing. I do the same thing. The way I use critiquing, I check in with their works too. I may not be critiquing right away, but I'm like, oh, this person posted something for me to see. Let me see what they're doing. Let me see what catches my eye right away. Because what catches my eye right away is usually the very thing I've been trying to study, whether it's, more beautiful action beats, more grounded, interesting action beats, or whether I'm working on MRUs, like motivation reaction units. Whatever I'm working on in craft, that's what catches my eye, and the other works that I'm looking at. So then I go, okay, I want to bring this part of that.
Oh, well, let me back up. I don't have any critique partners.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make
Which
sure
is
that when I
fascinating to
wake
me,
up in the
because
morning,
that's the weirdest thing I may have
not
ever
checking
heard.
in with anybody else's work at all. I'm totally checking in with my own work from the day before or something like that. I have nobody. And that's unfortunate because I was speaking with Jason Abbott, who I've done 2 of these with, and he's totally invited back whenever because he's such a great conversationalist. He has a huge critique community that he works with. He reads their work and he has them read his work, and he does the same thing that you're doing. He feels really invested in their work, and they feel really invested.
I do feel invested in their work. I feel sometimes as invested in their work as I am in mine. I want to see the stories that I'm reading reach people, and I want to see it do all that it can. You know, I love it. I don't see any of it as competition. I see it as the more good books are on a shelf, the more readers there will be. And readers aren't looking for one book. They're looking
looking for a lot. They're looking for a lifetime.
They're looking for a lifetime of books, and we can keep providing that together.
It's very interesting, and it's not a competition thing for me. It's a lazy thing. I want to. I'm a reader. I grew up as a reader too.
Right.
And you did as well. I mean, we walk into a library. We don't see, oh no, it's another book. We see, oh, books. Which one's the one I'm going to read next? And now it's like, oh, I have so many books on my phone. I have so many books to get through. And
I always do.
I just don't know how to get through them now. I just feel so busy. And I'm a new father too. I have 2-year-old twins.
It's so tough in the and you started with 2. That's extra tough in the beginning. Yeah. But I have 3 kids, so I do understand that.
Are they still in diapers, or are they all potty trained?
Oh, thank goodness, no. When my youngest is turning 9. When he finally came out of diapers, I literally threw myself a party. I don't have to wipe anybody's butt ever again except my own. Like, I'm done.
I was gonna say, please say one person. Please say one person.
Just one. Nobody else's.
So, getting away from that extreme turn and back into the writing. Are you working with speculative fiction writers, or are you working with more literary writers, or is it basically people who you want to read that you're critiquing?
I would say all of the above. Most of the people I do have a very weird and complicated process, because I'm one of those strange people who likes getting critiques with early drafts as I write them.
You're a writer. Every writer loves to get critiques. Everybody. I mean, I love it.
On a first draft, I throw them right out there. I say, this is rough. Help me find what's good. Help me find, so I have a strange process. So the people I give that to, they are my heroes in the world because they wade through this with me. But they're mostly speculative fiction, but they like to cross genres too. So there's like sci-fi and horror, sci-fi and mystery, sci-fi and a little bit of fantasy, sci-fi and heavy medical thriller kind of things. So like everybody's dabbling just a little around the edges. So mostly speculative fic. But I do have a few writers that I'm working with that are literary, contemporary, young adult and adult, that are just spectacular writers.
What makes them literary?
What makes them literary? The way that they're using language and voice is distinctive. It's unique. It's trying to bring something fresh that isn't, genre, we're bound a little bit in how we can use language and what
you think so?
Needs. I do think so. We have to hit certain expectations early on and clearly, or our readers are very confused and lost in these alien landscapes that we bring. So I mean, even if we're not on a different world, we're in a different time, or we're in this, something is significantly different in science fiction, I would say, than literary, and what the expectations are.
So I had a literature professor, actually the guy who taught all of my creative writing workshops, who considers himself magic realism. And I asked him specifically, do you consider yourself a speculative author? And he basically, no, I do not. And I would consider anybody who wrote the magic or realism genre as a speculative author. Anybody who put magic into realism would be somebody who's writing speculative genre.
Well, I would.
He considers himself a literary author.
I would say magical realism. Well, you picked the tricky one to ask. Does that make sense? Because magical realism is very special in that it is literary. It does have this very unique cultural history, the genre itself, that it is. It's not magic, but it is magic, and there's a special reason why. So I could see a lot of the magical realism people I know saying, no, I write literary, not spec. So that response doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, but it's kind of an insult too.
It's kind of a head nod. Yes, I would say the literary folk often. I'm sorry, I talked over you. I would say literary.
I crosstalk like you would not believe. I have a point. It's like, nope, I'm gonna say this. I don't even care. I was in the middle of your sentence. I'm just gonna say it.
I do the same, but I have 3 children, so I'm like, I win. You shush.
Well, I'm sorry. What did you say?
Sorry, I was saying, I do think sometimes that there is this like imaginary wall that people on the literary side see between themselves and spec fic, or any kind of genre fiction, even if it were like murder mystery, which I would say could easily fall over that imaginary wall. I think they sometimes see this wall between them and us because we can take licenses with story and plot that on their side they never can.
Yeah,
at the same time, because they don't have to, they have to stay within these strict physical rules. They have more options with language because it won't mean something literal.
Why do you keep saying that? I don't understand. There's any limitations on language within my writing.
Okay. I'll give you an example.
Are you saying that there's a limitation on readership on this side of the wall?
No, because there are always readers. There are always readers for anything. Everything has someone who's been waiting for that story. I mean, I believe that.
No, is there a limitation on what the readers on our side, on the speculative book side of the genre, will put up with? Are they expecting an even?
Yes, absolutely. There are limits to what they will put up with, what they'll accept. Okay, here's the, like, if I say
they won't put up with a challenge. What you're saying? Okay, this book is too hard. This guy's putting too much effort into the plot. I'm not.
Or they won't. They'll misunderstand something. Like, say, what's an example? If I were to say she materialized in front of me, if I said that in a literary novel, you would say, well, she didn't, like, just come to life in front of you. So she, like, that's what it felt like to the character because you said materialized. Now, if I say that in a sci-fi novel or in fantasy, the reader's scratching their heads going, does she mean this? How does she mean this? Was it with a spark of magical light? Did she use, some kind of holographic, or like, what happened here? There
so many different ways that can be took.
There's so many ways that could be understood. Yeah, that's what I mean. So if the same word in a science fiction or fantasy novel or any kind of genre novel brings to mind, do they really mean this is in a true way, or is this figurative? In literary, they know it's figurative. It can't be other than that.
Where do you find yourself writing more? Not literary, more speculative.
Oh, absolutely, I'm speculative. I'll wave my flag. Like, I love them all, but I love science fiction and fantasy somewhat for those those limitations that I see in the language, because they can't, a word can go so many ways. How do you slowly, or not slowly, immediately reveal what it actually means to the reader so they're not confused?
I love the fans.
I
I
love
love
that
sitting
bit.
in a room with a whole bunch of people that love that stuff and just talking about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just love when they get into it. When Star Wars was coming out, what, 7? Everybody was so excited about it, and you get like this fever, and you just want to dig deep, so deep into the whatever, and it's like, dude, it's a 2-hour movie, and we've been talking 5 hours about the meaning of the whatever. It's like, I love that stuff so much. It's like
Talk
it's
is
like on the
hairbrush.
screen.
Right.
The
I
costume
love
designer
that stuff
put
too.
that together.
Although
What's that?
I was saying I love that too. Although my sci-fi loves are not little movies. They are long TV series or long series of books that really dug.
Well, tell me some of the things that inspired you to pick up that pen or keyboard and start doing it, make that novel happen, put those stories together. What did it for you? What made Jess Creadon? How do you pronounce your last name? Is it Creadon or Creadon?
You said it right, Creedon.
Creadon. Okay.
Hmm.
What made you the writer that you are?
I hated performing music. I love making music. I love writing music, but I hated performing it because nobody listened to the words, and that was the only part I cared about. The rest was easy. So I hated that. So I had to run away from making music because it always ended up being this big part of it that I didn't like. And then I myself to watch Star Trek Voyager and Star Trek Enterprise because I was such a Next Generation fan. I was like, I'm not ready for another captain. And then I watched them and I loved them both. And I felt like we need more stories like this that I can sit and watch with my very young kids at the time. And I can, that the whole family can engage in these kinds of stories. Where are they? I have to write another book. And so I had to write a book. And that book just kept growing. And then I kept getting more ideas for books that just I needed to read. So I had to write them.
I heard recently that the guy who did Battlestar Galactica, God, what was his name? Yeah, Ron. Oh, are you sitting in front of your computer? I am going to be sitting.
You know what? I am. I'm going to look it up because this matters to me that we say it right. Because I'm introducing Battlestar Galactica to my kids like this month. Like that's what's happening. They're having to watch that when they ask to watch TV.
Battlestar Galactica. The writer of Battlestar Galactica. His name is Ron. Well, I don't know.
Ronald Moore?
Yep, Ronald Moore. Ronald Moore used to write for Star Trek, and he quit because I guess he did not appreciate the way that Voyager was going to be put together. So he decided that he was going to write Battlestar Galactica, and Battlestar Galactica was his vision for Star Trek Voyager. And when I heard that recently, when I heard that he wanted Star Trek Voyager to be the way Battlestar Galactica was actually written. You saw Battlestar Galactica, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All of it.
Oh my God, brilliant, right? Brilliant series.
Yeah.
It made me hate Star Trek Voyager. And
I love Star Trek. But it doesn't have a Gene Roddenberry's touch. And it doesn't have that lack of internal hostilities that happened on Battlestar Galactica. And so honestly, I'm glad both exist. But I love Gene Roddenberry for having that role.
Did he have a role in Voyager though? Wasn't he already passed by the time Voyager came out?
I believe he had.
Yeah.
But the rule was still kind of in play, if that makes sense. They had because of the timeline, they had a little bit of wiggle room, I think. But I've heard that Discovery will not follow that rule, and I'm interested to see how that feels.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Discovery too. Me too. It looks so good, honestly, and I'm not really into the movies that have been coming out recently with fake Kirk and all them.
I love alternate timeline ideas. Obviously, you heard my short story.
Yeah.
I love that concept. At the same time, that's not the world I'm invested in. The world I'm invested in was Janeway's last. You know, like we were over there. Not. I want to see what comes after that,
Yeah.
not what comes before. So I really want those new stories. It's why I felt I had to write the series I'm writing now, Contact Files. Is what does that become several thousand years further from the humanity we know?
Oh, you're writing Contact Files is a Star Trek fanfic that follows
In a
Voyager?
sense, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, that
It's
is
not really. It's a little bit like that. It's what if Star Trek, what if the show that we know, the show that we know that and love and has this geekdom, that happened. That's our universe. That happened. And then as time went on, strangely enough, there were coincidences that things that had been played on TV were happening to Earth and to our Milky Way. And so they started tying these ideas together. So Gene Roddenberry was kind of Earth's prophet of what the stars would look like, and other cultures that we were running into across, the Milky Way are also having their own histories of this. This writer back in time wrote a story of what they would look like in the stars, and it's all kind of this Roddenberry. They all had different names that kind of sounded like Rodden or Berry, or anyway. This is so it's not necessarily fan fiction. It's an homage to what actually happened. It spawned, whether it's self-fulfilling prophecy or not. It
So
just
you want Gene Roddenberry to be from the future, writing about a future that existed.
No, he was a historical Earth figure in the past whose creation ended up sounding a lot like the truth.
And so, what's happening with that?
What's happening with that story?
Yeah, is it developing into something that's being published? Or are you putting it on Wattpad? Or, I mean, it sounds like something that would be perfect for Wattpad.
It is not. I've got it in beta right now with another 4 betas. This is my 7th round of betas to get this story where I want it to be. And I'm writing the 3rd one right now.
So you have 3 novels on that concept.
Yes.
So what is stopping you from publishing that first book and giving the world your vision?
I want it to be perfect, if that makes sense. A first book is so important.
I have heard the indie writers do want to have a collection of books before they release. Is that what your goal is, to have a number of books before you kind of let them go?
Maybe. I'm hoping that I can have it in one of the publishers I have my eyes on, which means I need to try to go the traditional route before I set that free, because I would love to have a conversation with Star Trek and say, do you want something like this?
Star Trek they like writing books. I mean, they have oh man, do you know how many books have published with the Star Trek title? It's like hundreds.
I'm looking at one right now that my daughter's reading. Yep, so many. But I think it would be more fun for the readers if I wasn't just alluding to the specific things that Star Trek had in common with the universe, with the actual future, the actual imaginary future. But that's a ways out. I would like to have the 7th book written before I publish the 1st.
Well, it seems like, what is the name of the critique site that you're actually on, so that I can look at that too?
Scribblefile.com.
Scribble Files.
No, SCRIBOPHILE.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm horrible at that. Oh, no. Can you send me a link, please?
I can.
To the Voyage of Roadkill email address?
Yes. Uh-oh, are you there?
When somebody spells something to me, my brain just goes, and I can never get it.
Not a speller, huh?
I am a horrible speller. Yeah, it does not work for me. Even when I'm writing, it's like, okay, I got to spell this word. My brain goes, nope. Okay, fine. And I just make letters appear, and I let spell check make it happen for me.
Well, I am actually working on. I'm trying to write a standalone. I've never tried to do this before. I mean, I've tried to make a first in series feel like a standalone, even knowing it was a total lie. But I'm trying to write a standalone of Earth's first independent lunar colony.
Oh, I love that stuff. Yeah.
And I'm trying to do it from this very strange perspective. I've never quite touched this perspective before. Like a nobody from Earth, just a kid who is a word vomiter, ends up in this colony and gets assigned to food service. So like she becomes the lunch lady in space.
Yeah.
And lunch lady in space saves the colony. So it's kind of like a teen workplace drama.
I like it.
On the moon.
So that's where you're currently writing that.
I'm drafting that right now. I've got. I kind of got stuck on a scene, and I let myself get stuck on scenes and just let my brain work on them, but it's taking too long. I'm trying to write a party scene. Do you write good party scenes? I might need help.
What's a party scene?
Like, a big crowd of people. They go to a party. There's a feast. There's dancing or music or illicit behaviors.
I'll give you a piece of advice.
Yeah.
What is it that you want to say? Get there at the very last point in time that you can, and get out as fast as you humanly possibly can.
And late, out early. That's what I'm trying.
Yeah.
I still gotta, some people love that stuff, Brian. Some people love it. And even my kids are like, don't skimp us on this party.
Your kids are your biggest fans.
Oh, they love. No, I don't know that they are. My daughter would rather read fantasy than sci-fi, so she's bothering me to finish those.
Who is your daughter's favorite author?
J.K. Rowling.
Oh.
That's not even hard.
J.K. Rowling is steampunk fantasy.
What?
I don't know. I just thought that had the other day because she's writing modern tech mixed with magic.
Absolutely.
But isn't it like the definition of steampunk? Tech and magic mixed together?
I don't know. I had never had that thought before.
I had that thought walking down the stairs, and then I hit the basement and it went away. So I bring it to you. It took me exactly 15 steps to let it flitter out of my mind. So welcome to...
No, I had never thought of that, but it makes so much sense.
Right?
I wonder if she would think about it like that.
I don't know. She has like 1 billion followers, so I don't even bother tweeting anything at her.
I think I've tweeted a few things at her. I can't imagine what, though. Oh, I told her thank you for the Fantastic Beasts. Because I felt like it was so poignant, that message, right? When we got the movie, I needed that movie when it happened, and I was just grateful to her. I don't mind tweeting at anybody. I don't care how important or how many they are. I'll tell them thank you.
I read one John Scalzi book, and I couldn't even read it because they drove me crazy. I guess, supposedly, according to my first guest, he decided he was going to make a point of saying he said, she said all the way through the novel, just because he said dialogue tags are worthless points of writing. So it actually made me so upset that I had to put the book down. Will Wheaton read the audiobook, so I listened to that, and I tweeted him all the time. He's a sarcastic jerk, but I love it. So
what did he do with the he said, she said?
He decided that every single dialogue tag will end with he said, she said. So he'll have something like, Creadon said or said this, and then somebody else said he said this, and it's really bad.
Oh my!
Because it's basically a Star Trek ripoff where the red shirts have I just recommend it. It's really fantastic. I will not be able to do it justice because I'm trying to make my Twitter work and tell you at the same time. How do you want my Twitter work? Okay, click that button.
Yeah, I have to walk away from the computer to talk to people because I'll forget that I'm not talking. I'm like, but I'm putting words out. Oh, they can't hear that.
All right, I know you sent me a message. There it is.
Yeah, I just sent you to Scribble file.
Sent me an email. Okay. All right, pull that up. I'll put this in the notes. Oh, Scribble file.
Yeah, don't link my story though. I don't want to. I don't need new readers right now.
I guess that's the difference. The one thing that I am is brave. I don't care. I just want to write as many things as I possibly can, and I put them out there quickly. The one thing I'm working on right now, I'm working on it for like a year. And it's taking me forever. Not because I'm afraid to put it out there in the world that I think it's not done. It's just I'm working on my second draft and I can't get to the ending fast enough because I have all these other projects that I'm working on, and I work on short fiction. Like every month, I try to do like 3 or 4 pieces of short fiction. Also, just binds my time up really tightly.
I bet it does. I mean, that's kind of how I feel with critiques. My critiques are my short fiction.
I would love to work with other authors on their stories. I'm just afraid that if I work with them and I say harsh things, that they'll say harsh things back just to be mean.
Sometimes that happens. I mean, sometimes that happens, absolutely. And some people aren't ready for feedback. I was one of them at first. I gave terrible feedback at first, and I couldn't handle the feedback I got. I wanted to argue with everybody.
I just don't want to work with those type of people. I'm sorry, you're not. I don't know who you are. No, I'm not saying you specifically.
Right.
I'm saying like the writer. I don't know who you are, how capable you are of handling feedback, and I just don't trust you to give you feedback. I can help you grow as a writer. I can.
I do like to work with people that I've learned to trust. Absolutely, the people that
I don't know you, and I don't want to take that argument from you. Okay, here's the thing: you're not being able to your grammar. 2, you're not showing me anything in this story. And blah, 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 blah. These are the things that you need to work on. And then what do I get back? This horrible flood of abuse. I'm like, oh.
Well, it makes you wonder how it makes not makes you wonder. It makes you understand how agents would feel who are getting, these responses from people they've rejected.
Yeah, no.
Apparently that's common. It sounds horrible. I couldn't handle a job like that with people just attacking me for trying to help them. Like, how would I?
It makes sense. I mean, when I finish a novel, it's on Amazon, and it's buried by 3,500 new works of fiction every single day that get published on Amazon. And I sent queries out before I published it on Amazon. I sent them out, hundreds a day to new agents and said, "Hey,
hundreds a day."
Yeah, I really tried to get an agent. It's impossible unless you have, an audience. Unless you have caught their eye in some way, you're invisible. The same thing on Amazon. It's just really, really difficult to get attention. It's whether you've written something miraculous, you've won tons of contests, you've done something that has caught the eye of an agent. They don't care. They're not going to probably read your query letter. They will look at your Twitter. If you don't have, tens of thousands of followers, if you've done something miraculous that puts your head above the crowd, you're invisible. And
some great stories have been invisible. I absolutely see that, and even great stories that we love, they were rejected before they were accepted.
Exactly.
But there's something about the traditional publishing business that draws me, I suppose, because I don't believe agents are just ignoring their queries. I think they're reading them with like a hungry heart for something that blows them away, but they have to be very selective in what can blow them away, because it's not just what affects them, but what they can sell and who they know right then that they can sell to.
Going back to J.K. Rowling, if you look at who rejected her, she went to Scholastic or whoever published her in England. The 10 publishers that said no to her that same very year they published The Sorcerer's Stone, they published probably some horrible book on, some social media diva that didn't sell crap copies. You know what I mean?
You
But
think?
yes,
I
to
mean,
her, millions of
I
dollars.
think I think publishers have to look for their audience. Before there was Rowling, before Sorcerer's Stone, there wasn't that audience yet. Does that make sense? So like the
Yeah.
marketers, the agents reading that are thinking, I don't, man, this. Even if they loved it, they'd have thought, how do I sell this? Who do I tell this is like? I can't comp this. Nothing is like this. So I can't sell it to my board. Somebody had to take a risk and say, no, I think there's an audience for this. It's different, but it's special. Somebody has to take a risk. And the problem is, I mean, I suppose there are problems in self-publishing too. It's hard to be at the right time with the right story that the audience is actually ready for. Because maybe if they'd loved a story just like that the year before, they would not have been ready. Or they might have wanted something different from it.
What you like about traditional publishing is the fact that it does pull you above the crowd. What traditional publishing does is it makes you look, it pulls you out of the slush pile, basically. It says you have talent. You know what I mean? What we don't like about indie publishing is that you are among millions. Everybody and their mother can publish now. Like I said, my novel got mixed up in 3,500 stories the same very day that I published it on Amazon. You know what I mean? And that was 3 months ago. So you do the math, or not 3 months ago. I don't even how many months ago
I do get that. I understand that. I mean, I think that's why I'm pushing for traditional, especially because I'm wanting to reach younger readers and young adults.
That's how you need to figure out the math between now and whenever to figure out how to get the attention on you. Is it going to be a badass query letter? Is it going to be forming a relationship between you and that agent that you're going to get to represent you? Is it going to be, how do you make yourself stand out so that
it might just be knowing the right person at the right conference at the right time when they're like, I just had this idea, I want this, and I'm like, I have it.
But what's interesting? It's like you said the right story at the right time, but it's like you being the right Jess Creadon at the right time.
Exactly, that too.
About being the right artist at the right time. You just be you, and you be you until you're not you anymore. And just live the life you're gonna live and do what makes you happy. And then what's gonna happen is gonna happen. You be the right mom, you be the right wife, you be the right writer, you be the right artist, you be the right musician, and everything else doesn't matter because it'll all work out in the end.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's fun. I mean, we do it because it's fun.
Yeah, right. I wake up at 2:00 in the morning, not because I don't like sleeping next to my wife. I do it because I love coming down here and punching out the words on my computer in the right order that makes me feel like I wrote a good story. And I really, really love writing a novel. I did it once and it was freaking addictive, and I can't wait to write the next one. And I can't wait to finish the third one. And I know that I have a finite time on this earth, and I really want to have a nice little collection to pass on to my kids. There's like a podcast out there right now. These 3 English dudes found a collection of blue prose or purple prose that their dad had written or something, and now they're reading it page by page over their podcast.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think if I didn't publish in my lifetime, my children would do it for me.
Really hard, right?
You can't give up on this. People should read it.
That's like a legacy thing for me too. I think about my son and my daughter. Like I kick off and I leave like millions and millions of pages worth of prose behind. I mean, what a legacy, you know what I mean? Dad really tried. Look what he's got here. I mean, that's pretty cool. I don't know what my dad's going to leave me. I haven't talked to him in over a decade.
Yes, exactly. I was kind of building that. It's funny. I'm standing in this room right now, Brian. It's the bedroom I had as a teenager because I'm at my mother's house. And this room burned down, Y2K, 2000. And everything that I had collected that I'd written since I was 3, I was 20 at that time. Since I was 3, it burned up in that fire. And so I had to start all of that over. Like my legacy was gone. All my poems, all the songs that I hadn't memorized, anything that I'd written down, all the short stories and half-written novels were just, smoke. So I had to catch up.
Yeah, I mean, chances are what you had when you were a kid made you who you are as an adult, but doesn't mean any of that stuff had any value, right? What
Right.
you
No,
have right
it's
now,
just been,
and even if today the cloud went, because everything that we have today is in a cloud. Say Korea
right.
sends over a nuclear bomb and it explodes in our atmosphere, EMPs, and everything disappears. I mean, everything that we've created,
Right.
every word we put into the cloud, it's still made
That
who
is
we
a
are.
scary thought. What if like
It is.
everything on Amazon just evaporated? Like Kindle, gone.
Yeah.
Scribble file, gone. Scrivener, you can't touch it ever again. And
Never
Word
again.
will never work. Like, what would we do? How would we rebuild the industry?
Oh man, have you read 3 Seconds Later? I think it's 3 Seconds Later.
Who's why?
Huh?
Why?
Have you read? Yeah, I'd recommend it. It's highly, it's one of the most scary books I've ever read in my life. 3
Oh yeah.
Seconds Later.
3 seconds later. I'll check it out.
That's not called 3 Seconds Later, though.
What's it called? How am I supposed to check it out, Brian? Help me out here.
I have no clue. Now I had to find out. 10 minutes later,
All right,
3
you
days
have
later.
to put it in the liner notes so I can find it too.
All right, I'll try to find it. 3 days later, it was. I'll ask my wife. She knows everything. She's like my brain. She's
Damn
like,
right she does.
I think it's 3 days later.
That's funny. The scariest book, this is weird to admit, the scariest book I ever read was The Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, I haven't read it, and I didn't watch the series, but I've heard that it's fantastic.
Well, I loved the series, but I probably read it too young. I was 9 when I read that, and it kind of rocked me. And like from then on, my recurring dream was conservatives are going to come and they're going to try to like harness my eggs. Like that was my nightmare. So that on the screen was a little jarring. I was like, oh no, it's just as scary now as it was before.
Isn't that a big theme in alien abductions as well?
Yes. And it was what scared me about X-Files. Of course, I was glued to that because I was terrified.
Oh, it's called 1 Second Later. I apologize. I will put it
1 second later. Yeah, that narrowed the timeline.
Why wouldn't it pull up?
How are you going to react? You have no choice.
Okay, it's so good. It's so scary. It's like you look at your life and just, unless you're like really fit and you're not on any drugs and you survive on like no food and
you're a breatharian.
You're basically dead, and you have guns.
Oh, I was married to a prepper, so like these things that you're saying were I understand exactly how horrible it is to sit in that thought. What if it's all gone and I'm down to what I've got?
Exactly, and you've got to work as a community too. And you've got to work as a community, and you've got to be in incredibly good shape because if the entire town says, John down the road has all this water and all this canned food.
You better be Rick from Walking Dead, or you're screwed. And if you don't have a Rick, you better find you one. Yeah, no, this is a scary thought to sit in.
Yep, and we're going to be launching missiles at North Korea from Hawaii soon, potentially. I don't know what's going on in the world that we live in. So do you think that, what was it called? The Occupy movement actually made a difference? Going back.
I think about that a lot. And in fact, a few years after Occupy, I was trying to answer that question in my master's program. Did Occupy affect things? And I will say it did to an extent. It's very small. I wish it had been much different. The thing was, they represented so many complaints and so many just wrongs with America and with the world that it would have been, there's no way to respond to that because it's basically like everything's wrong, fix it all. How do you fix it all? But I
Did
would
it
say,
change?
even in my program, my education program, just a few years after Occupy, um, Occupy movement was in my textbooks. People were talking about what could happen, how people can respond, and how hurt and angry the students are, um, and it was compared to other student movements of the last 100, 200 years, and what they thought was this was bigger, and yet all it did was give people the language to talk about it, but it didn't get action done. We don't have answers here. There are answers elsewhere, but we're not using them.
You know what's funny to me? It was a peaceful demonstration too, and it turned violent, kind of. And then
there were plans. I mean, anytime that there's some kind of a protest, there will be people wanting it to turn violent because it feeds the machine. So the only violence that I can say I heard about in Occupy, and I was pretty hooked in, watching the live streams, talking to people who are reporting on where the police are showing up and what streets people are marching down. And what I could see from that was the people who were being violent, they were plants. They weren't, homegrown, or they weren't there to protest. They were there to start something because they'd been paid to.
I never know about the protesters being violent. I just know about the cops that were spraying people in the face.
The cops were terrible.
Yeah, the cops were horrible. And but I'm thinking about that protesting in 2010 that led to the women's protesting after the Trump election that were violent. The left versus the right protesting that happened, and there were, anti-women beating up the women and blah, blah, blah. The anti-Trumpers beating up the Clinton supporters. And it was like, dude, what is going on here? Now we're not even protesting. Now we're basically having civil wars in the street. The Black Lives Matter was beating up blah blah blahs, and Blue Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter. You should think about that, because they have worked very, very hard to maintain a civil disobedience, as they've been taught, as they've been doing all along. Like, Black Lives Matter isn't. I mean, it's kind of a new hashtag. Well, it was a new hashtag. It's no longer new, but they'd always been out there protesting. They'd always been out there saying, "Stop killing our children. Stop making us fear for our lives to walk to the store." So, I wouldn't say that they've been violent. I would say not responding to the complaints of that community is going to lead to violence, because you can't just keep ignoring these problems. When your kids are being killed, you no longer have that barrier when it's the justice system doing it to your children. Like, there's no peacefulness after that. How can you?
I don't know. The fact that the justice system has been putting the African American community in prison for the last 50 years too, just willy-nilly over nothing, is just devastating as well. Something they can never get over as a community. There's nothing they can do. They have
not unless it stops. How can you get over something that's ongoing? And
honestly, I mean, how many generations is it going to be before they can get over it? I mean, how many generations can they recover from that, having grandfathers and fathers?
I don't know.
I don't know either. It's been.
I wish there were answers for this thing. That has to stop happening before a community can heal. Right now, I mean, it's kind of like, and I see other communities acting in the same fight or flight mode. I mean, the Native American community, they've never stopped protesting. It's just that sometimes we hear about it. Sometimes white people show up and join in, but they also kind of crash the party.
Wait, you mean the Redskins? That's not disgusting.
I mean, when white people show up to the Native American protests, they stomp through prayer circles. They violate the land. They, want everyone to listen to the song they just wrote on their guitar. Like, excuse me, you entered, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm a white person, and it pains me how I have to be that. Like, how I can't choose to be something else that's shameful.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like being called white, honestly. I don't think it's a very appropriate term. And people who choose to call themselves white,
Well,
it's just like it's kind of disgusting in a way.
I'm kind of a mutt, and I know I'm a mutt, and I kind of look at everyone else, and I'm like, I bet you're really a mutt too. Like, you're not just one thing, or
Yeah.
you know, um, but not everyone thinks like me. And man, I live in Georgia. I am just north of Atlanta, Georgia. The KKK has groups out here. I have these illnesses, like cancers, in my community that I can't fight. I don't know how to fight.
Yeah. But you're
But
fighting, I guess. I mean, we all
I
fight.
write stories. I write the best stories I can, and I'm gonna try to get them in the right hands. What
It's
else?
sad. This is our adult life, unfortunately, and we're not even certain what we're gonna have tomorrow. Are we gonna have this continuing, or are we gonna have the opportunity to sit in front of our computers and have a livelihood? Are we gonna have a career? Are we gonna have the opportunity to make a living? Do we
Well,
have a
honestly,
future? Do we have
I
the
dealt with
opportunity to
all
raise
of
our
that,
families?
all of those fears. I ran away at 9/11. I ran away to a commune and then to another commune, and then, like I've already lived in. We're at a nothing is certain. Nothing is ever certain. It never was. Why did At some point you just keep trying to find the parts that work.
Yeah. Well, community. We're all humans. Hopefully, we can find a way to communicate and make this thing work. And hopefully, I mean, people stop suffering. And there are a lot of people out there that do suffer. And it's all based on racism. It's all based on what?
Colonial politics.
Colonial politics, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an old story,
Xenophobia.
too. That's not even a new
Yeah.
story anymore. Fossil fuels, being selfish and greedy. And God, this horrible election that just happened is just more of the same bullshit, I guess.
Well, and when I think about all of these things, I mean, I immediately turn to books, and I don't just see other writers going, okay, I just have to write it. I have to write a better world, and everyone's writing these dystopias, and I understand the need. I write utopian fiction, and I don't care how weird
I
it is.
saw that. You mentioned
I
that in your thing.
I
You
work
want to
hard
write about
to.
Star Trek utopian fiction. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's very
I,
interesting.
I mean, does that mean, and people have this, conception about utopia that means nothing goes wrong. No, it just means that we have ways to address the things that go wrong. It just means we have processes that are supposed to work. Maybe they won't. Maybe we'll have to get creative. Maybe we'll have to figure out something new, but we will work together
Do you know
to
what's
find
really
an answer,
sad
and that's
though?
all it means.
In the Star Trek world, they had to go down to freaking the Stone Age, didn't they? Before they had the opportunity to go build themselves back up to utopia, though. I mean, they had to go down to nothing. They had to, you know, had to have World War III and throw nuclear bombs at each other before they were able to build the warp core engines and meet the goal.
Right. But then there was a Ephraim Cochrane. There were still people looking for new answers. So
At the end of it all. As I think the population, I can't remember exactly what the lore is in that series, but I mean the population dwindled down to a few million humans or something along those lines.
well, I
Sadly.
think a lot about Dune. I think I think a lot about Dune when I think about how to build a utopian society. And I don't think they did in Dune. I don't think that's what Herbert accomplished, but I definitely think that's what the Bene Gesserit were supposed to be. And I try to think, how can my stories take off where the Foundation left off, where Dune left off, where the Bene Gesserit left off, where and Star Trek 2, where they had a chance to do things very different and better. What if those things were all true?
What is it called? I can't. My brain. I swear to God. I think it's a sign of dementia. I cannot make it work when I want it to make it work. But Star Trek is a great series. I'm looking forward to coming back. Are you excited about Discovery? Are you going to watch it?
I'm absolutely going to watch it. I'm going to watch it with my children, like weekly. And I want to hear what they have to say too, because whether or not Star Trek continues to be like possible for TV, whether the stories that it's making are going to keep going, they're the ones that I'm gonna listen to about that.
Um, Go ahead.
I'm afraid that it's going to be too grown up, and I'm afraid that it's not going to have the silliness or the lightheartedness that Star Trek has done so well.
Yeah, the Next Generation and the original series definitely had that kind of episodic,
Well,
here's some
and
aliens,
Voyager did
excitement, and it's
too.
over.
And Voyager did too with specific characters.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Paris and his holograms were
Yeah.
just, I mean, there was some lightheartedness and just some
It was
sweetness.
family
to it.
entertainment. It really
It was.
was.
And I want that. And I didn't feel like Deep Space Nine was.
I think it had elements. It had the kids, growing up, baseball, and the holographic programming kind of geared towards younger
Yeah, I
audience.
liked the aliens better than the plot lines in Deep Space Nine.
But I always thought that the plot lines were interesting. I was older though for Deep Space Nine, and I guess the overall arc of Voyager was interesting to me. Getting back to Earth, I like that too. How are we going to do it? Oh, they got distracted again.
Well, and Cass. Oh my goodness, Cass was one of my favorite characters.
Oh, you liked Cass?
I did.
I actually liked when she went away. I didn't like what's her face.
I liked how she went away. I liked that a lot. I think that's what I like most about her.
I guess at that point I was already in creative writing too, and I really enjoyed the individual science fiction stories, how they kind of work themselves. I like the arcs individually per episode. I'm like, God, these are so interesting as far as stories go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have actually, I think, exceeded an hour. I have been needing to time these episodes so I can like take out when I make mistakes, so I seem perfect and infallible. But again, I did not. So hopefully we've reached that hour mark. And I'm going to start doing something different. I'm going to ask you to let my listeners know if there's anything you want them to know. Is there anything that you want them to know?
Enjoy books. Enjoy good books. If you're not enjoying, find another one, because there is no competition between writers. There's just more books. That's it.
How can people find you?
You can find me at Twitter at Jess Creadon. You can find me on WordPress or Facebook. I'm kind of around, so just look for me on there.
I'll put that stuff in the notes. What are you reading?
Today, I'm reading Six of Crows. I finally got it from my library. I've had to wait 6 months for this to come from my library.
That Game of Thrones?
No, Six of Crows by Lee Bardugo. I'm not sure how to say her last name.
Is that fantasy or science fiction?
It is, I think, kind of a fantasy. It's a heist novel, kind of a fantasy heist. There's magic, so it must be fantasy.
Oh, great. So is it a series or is it start of something?
It's a series. I think this one came out 4 or 5 years ago, and the trilogy should all be out now.
Oh, okay. Well, cool. All right. Well, fantastic. I really enjoyed talking with you. This conversation went a lot of great places. I'm glad I reached out to you on the show.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Jess Creadon. I have some authors coming up. Tomorrow on the podcast, I have an author by the name of Lauren Garcia. She is a fantasy author. We're going to talk for an hour and see what comes up. You can follow me at BRYAIELLO. Check out some of my fiction at brianyellow.com. Show notes, best place to see what's going on. Guys, thanks for listening. Really appreciate it. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Say what you mean, say what you feel. I'm saying what I mean and what I feel. I'm saying what I mean and